A queen gazed at the falling snow with wonder, her eyes catching the sight of a lone rose blooming despite the harsh cold. Intrigued, she reached out, but the thorn pricked her finger, drawing 3 crimson drops of blood. As they splattered against the snow's pure white, the queen marveled at the contrast. "If only I could have a child," she mused, "with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, hair as black as a raven's feathers, and the strength of this rose." Not long after, the queen gave birth to a daughter, whom she named Snow White. The child's beauty and kindness captivated the kingdom, and she was beloved by all. Yet, that joy was fleeting, for the following winter proved cruel. The queen fell gravely ill and passed away, leaving the king devastated. While the king mourned his wife, an enigmatic and dark army emerged, exploiting his sorrow. Desperate, he led his soldiers into battle. Though his army triumphed, the victory brought no solace, for a more sinister fate was waiting. After the battle, one of the king's knights discovered a prisoner among the enemy and called the king's attention to her. When the king approached, he saw a woman of stunning beauty. "You need not fear me," he assured her. "You are safe here." He asked for her name. "Ravenna," she whispered. The king was so enchanted by Ravenna's beauty that, for the first time, his sorrow seemed to lift. The very next day, he made her his queen. Though Ravenna praised Snow White for her charm and kindness, rumors whispered that Snow White was the most beautiful girl in the land. That night, as the king lay in his chambers, Ravenna betrayed him. On the brink of intimacy, she drove a dagger into his heart, killing him. With the king gone, Ravenna opened the gates of the castle, not for the phantom army she had once conjured, but for the real forces that now obeyed her command. Snow White awoke to the sound of alarm bells and rushed to her father's chamber, only to find him lifeless with a dagger still buried in his chest. Before she could flee, Ravenna entered the room. Snow White tried to escape, but the gates to the castle slammed shut, trapping her inside. Guards seized her, and Ravenna imprisoned her high in the north tower. Later, the new queen summoned her enchanted mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she asked, "who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror responded, "You, my queen, are the fairest. Yet your reign has poisoned the land, and your beauty will not last forever." Determined to preserve her power, Ravenna consumed the hearts of birds to maintain her youth and ordered her brother, Finn, to bring her young maidens. With every soul she drained, Ravenna's beauty was restored, while her victims were left old and frail. But one day, the mirror warned her, "There is one now fairer than you, Snow White. Her purity is your undoing. Yet her heart can also be your salvation. Take it, and you shall never age or weaken again." Ravenna, filled with rage, ordered Finn to retrieve Snow White from the dungeon. However, when Finn went to seize her, Snow White fought back, scratching his face with a hidden nail and delivering a sharp blow to his groin. She escaped the dungeon and, with a raven guiding her, found a hidden passage leading to the forest beyond the castle walls. She reached the edge of a cliff, hesitating only briefly before plunging into the icy waters below. Exhausted but determined, Snow White swam to safety and followed the raven to a white horse. Mounting the horse, she rode toward the dark forest, with Ravenna's guards hot on her trail. The forest proved treacherous for both Snow White and the pursuing soldiers. As her horse became trapped in a quagmire, Snow White continued on foot, venturing deeper into the ominous woods. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Ravenna berated Finn for his failure. "A mere girl armed with a nail bested you," she sneered. "If she had a sword, she would have overthrown my kingdom." Finn promised to correct his mistake. "I know someone who can catch her, a huntsman named Eric. He knows the dark forest better than anyone." Eric, a grief-stricken widower and a drunkard, was soon brought to the queen. "Find the girl," Ravenna commanded. "Bring her to me, and I will reward you." When Eric resisted, Ravenna offered him a cruel bargain. "Bring me Snow White, and I will restore your wife's life." Reluctantly, Eric agreed and set off into the forest with Finn and a group of guards. He soon found Snow White's trail and pursued her. When he finally caught her, Snow White pleaded with him. The queen wants my heart. If you help me, you'll save my life. Eric hesitated but ultimately decided to protect her. When Finn arrived to collect Snow White, Eric turned on him, demanding that Ravenna keep her promise. Finn mocked him. The queen has many powers, he jeered. But she cannot raise the dead. Furious, Eric fought off the guards, allowing Snow White to escape deeper into the forest. Together, Snow White and Eric journeyed onward. Along the way, they encountered a band of 7 dwarves, who initially captured them but later agreed to help. As they traveled, Snow White encountered a majestic white stag, which bowed before her, a sign that she was destined for greatness. Their brief moment of peace was interrupted by Ravenna's soldiers, who ambushed them. In the ensuing battle, a dwarf named Gus sacrificed himself to save Snow White, and the group mourned his loss. Soon after, Ravenna disguised herself as Snow White's childhood friend, William. She tricked Snow White into eating a poison apple, and Snow collapsed, her body lifeless. Ravenna gloated, declaring, "By fairest blood it was done, and by fairest blood it will be undone." Eric, stricken with grief, kissed Snow White's forehead and shed a single tear. As his tear touched her skin, Snow White awoke, breaking the curse. Determined to end Ravenna's reign, Snow White rallied the Duke's army. Clad in armor, she led them into battle, storming the castle gates. Though Ravenna unleashed an army of glass soldiers, Snow White fought her way to the queen. In their final confrontation, Ravenna sneered, "You are weak, just like your father." But Snow White fought back with all her strength. Seizing an opportunity, she drove a sword into Ravenna's heart. "By fairest blood, it was done," Snow White whispered. "And by fairest blood, it will be undone." As Ravenna crumbled to dust, her army shattered, and the kingdom was freed from her curse. With the tyrant defeated, Snow White was crowned queen. The people cheered, "Long live the queen!" as peace returned to the land. And so, the kingdom flourished under Snow White's just and noble rule.